Coming to the last part of this instruction course, so I am going to talk about something which is often overlooked in pediatric vision assessment, that is the pediatric low vision care. So I do not have any commercial interests or financial relationships to disclose. So what exactly is low vision? There is a large grey area between a normal vision and total blindness that we should realize. So according to the definition, it is defined as low vision is one who has impairment of visual function even after treatment or standard refractive correction and has a best corrected visual acuity in the better eye of 618 to light perception and also a visual field of only 10 degrees from the point of fixation. But the important thing to note is that the person is able to use this remaining vision for the planning and execution of a task. So with the proper counseling and with the proper aids, they will be able to carry on a normal life. So the global estimate of low vision is quite staggering. Almost according to 2002 statistics, there are about 161 million visually impaired people in this world, out of which only 37 million are totally blind and 124 million are having low vision. And the fact is that 90% of this are in the developing world of Asia and Africa. So what are the challenges peculiar when it comes to children? As we have already seen, measuring a visual function even in a normal child is quite challenging. So you can imagine how to exactly measure a vision in a child with low vision is a very challenging task. And also there is an emotional and psychological impact whenever we address a child with low vision and the parents counseling, because we have to explain in very gentle terms regarding the visual status and how to go about managing their lives. And their visual needs also vary as they become older. At each stage their visual needs are varying in children with low vision. So what are the causes of low vision in children? According to a study done by Claire Gilbert et al., the most common causes are those in the lens and the retina, amblyopia and optic nerve and a few more other causes. If we have to list them, the more common causes would be delayed visual maturation, cerebral or cortical visual impairment, nystagmus, Leber's amaurosis, retinal dystrophies, achromatopsia, bilateral optic nerve hypoplasia, albinism, etc. So how do you evaluate visual function in a child with no apparent visual response as given by a history given by the parents? So if you see a child whose parents are complaining that the child is not able to see or not able to fix on my face or objects, you first see whether the child has a spontaneous nystagmus or not. If there is nystagmus, then you examine the eye and rule out any organic causes for nystagmus, which could be either in the anterior segment, like even a congenital cataract which has not been treated for a long time could result in a nystagmus. So any other corneal opacities or retinal causes, probably you may have to do electroretinogram to come to the correct diagnosis, or it could be causes in the optic nerve. But if there is no nystagmus, you can try to elicit a vestibulo-ocular reflex. If that is also normal, then the diagnosis could either be a cortical visual impairment or a delayed visual maturation. But if the vestibulo-ocular reflex is abnormal, then it could be a cortical oculomotor apraxia or a saccadic palsy, and then you might need to do a neuroimaging. So why do we have to think about sight so much in a child? Because the sight and the developmental milestones are very much interlinked. So in a normal sighted child, the vision helps in activation of the reticular formation and the cortex, and this leads to a wakeful alert state, and this facilitates learning. So all the milestones are in a child related very much to their vision. So in a visually impaired child, there is less than normal activation of the reticular formation and cortex and leads to a reduced alertness, sensory deprivation, and leads to delay in the motor milestones. So there is a cycle of impact here. The child does not get correct concepts about people, distorted information about the world surrounding it. So there is lack of complete feedback and leads to decreased movement. So there are various barriers also for a child with low vision in communication, language, fine gross motor skills, understanding thought process, social skills, emotional development, self-help, and hence there is a very important need for early intervention and visual rehabilitation. So nearly 85% of a child's early learning occurs through vision, and child who are born with blindness or low vision are at greater risk for developmental delays and communicative disorders. So what exactly do you need in when you are trying to assess low vision? Is an ophthalmologist with orientation towards pediatric eye care services, a trained orthoptist, optometrist, to correctly estimate the visual function in children, do pediatric refraction and the prescription of low vision aids, and also you need a counselor to talk to the parents about the child's visual condition. So when it comes to the assessment, you need to ask yourself few questions. Does this child have low vision? Why does the child have low vision? What is the prognosis for this child? What is the functional vision? And is this an ongoing or a progressive condition? So coming to the examination of a child with low vision, you have to take a very detailed history regarding the birth and developmental milestones and the family history, etc. And then try to examine the visual acuity, do a proper refraction, field testing, color vision, contrast, extraocular motility, slit lamp examination, and the fundus evaluation. So there are types of acuity. As we said earlier, we have to look on things like whether the child is able to fixate on light at all, whether the child is able to follow objects. In slightly older children, you can quantify with the ETDRS charts, which is most commonly used in low vision assessment. And color vision with varying tests that are available, Ishihara or the Farnsworth D19. Contrast test can be done whenever possible. And if we see that the child is not fixing at all, then we need to advise visual stimulation therapy. If there is no fixation to light, then we initially advise visual stimulation using diode lights, that is red, green and blue, that flicker and move from one light to another. And if fixation to light has developed, then we advise stimulation with bright environment and colored toys, about 15 to half an hour in morning and evening. So this is a child who came to our clinic. This is a normal milestones, but the child had a diagnosis of Leber's amaurosis. Child's fixation to objects is not very clear, but when we shine a torchlight, the child seems to be very interested. So we advised light stimulation exercise for this child. They may either buy a running light from us, or they can use a simple arrangement like this at home. And we advise this kind of stimulation for 15 minutes. Call back after a month or two and see whether the child's fixation has improved. And if the child is fixing, then we advise stimulation with bright toys and modification of environment in the child's room, putting a bright curtains or a bedspread, and even the mother to wear bright colored clothes, so that the child starts fixing on the mother's face first. And there are various ways of vision stimulation in infants. You can use brightly patterned objects, patterned toys, doormats, toys with lights, etc. And there are special toys available for visually impaired children. Those use bright colors and field textures so that the child can be better interested and motivated to explore the environment. And when it comes to older children, so you do environmental modification first, and then you need to prescribe some kind of low vision devices also to enhance their residual vision. So this could be either optical, non-optical or electronic devices. So what is the principle on which most of the low vision devices work is that on magnification. So magnification means that you are stimulating more of the retinal area. So more of the visual receptors are stimulated, and you help the child to use the remaining vision. So the important properties are the field of view, magnification, working distance and the configuration. So as the magnification will increase, the field of view will correspondingly decrease. So we need to strike a balance between the two. So various optical devices for near include, first we can try the high-ad near vision glasses, which could be single or aspheric glasses or a doublet glasses. Spectacle magnifiers offer a very large field of view. They prolong the child's viewing time. They are hands-free, and they have a short viewing distance. Then we can try handheld magnifiers. They can available in various powers from about 2 times to 12, 15, even 16 times magnification. But it requires steady hands and good of hand-eye coordination. And stand magnifiers, they are also available with built-in illumination, so they can be used by children with retinitis pigmentosa and all. So these are helpful for them. But they require a smooth surface on which you have to rest the stand. And there are the latest pocket zoom magnifiers available, so that have a smooth increase in the range of magnification. Fresnel magnifiers are also available now. So when it comes to low vision devices for distance, because children most often they have to look at the blackboard and need to follow what the teacher is what is being taught in school. So telescopes are very much useful for school-going children, but it requires a lot of training so that the child learns to focus, because the field of view is reduced in telescopes. So usually we prescribe the monocular telescope so that they can use one eye for distance and the other eye to write in the notebook, but it needs a lot of training. So types of telescopes available now include the clip-on telescopes or the monocular, binoculars, and nowadays the autofocus wide field telescopes are also available, though now they are a bit expensive. Non-optical devices also should be considered, like the large print books, note writing guides, reading lamps, tables with adjustable tints, absorptive filters, etc. And when you are dealing with a child with cone dystrophy or retinitis pigmentosa, albinism, they will have photophobia also. So you need to consider glasses with the correct tints, as Vijay Madam mentioned earlier. And non-optical devices regarding, we should give the correct information regarding the placement of the book, the correct lighting, etc., so that the parents can help the children at home. And projection systems like the CCTV are also very useful because they help to magnify to whatever extent is required by the child, and they can read for longer periods of time. Various softwares are available for low vision children, low vision people, which enable them to use the computers like screen magnifiers, etc. So in older children, rehabilitation would include classroom training, mobility training, computer training, etc. So as far as possible, we are trying to integrate these children into the normal schools. So we have to communicate to the teachers regarding the best place to seat these children in the classroom to avoid the glare on the board, use of dark pencils, bold line notebooks, bold letters, and also they should be compassionate to the children, these children, because they might take more time than their normal counterparts, but they might be intelligent, so they can do normal equally or even better than the normal children if they are a little bit patient towards these children. So the current status is far from satisfactory because many children are waiting for the light of education, so we have to try to integrate them into the mainstream as far as possible. And so the goals would be to increase the functionality, to make the most of the remaining vision, provide a link to the community's resources and support services, and also education. And also these children might be having multiple disabilities like torch infections that could have affected development of the eyes and ears, and also with brain damage due to perinatal asphyxia, infections or syndromes. So these also needs to be addressed, and it's not practical for any single professional group or agency to provide all the elements required to provide a comprehensive low vision service. So a multidisciplinary approach is required. So sight is next to life. So let us work together to restore it. Thank you.